Space is one of the most mysterious places imaginable. Its exploration is dangerous not only due to the lack of atmosphere, low temperatures, and celestial bodies. Really scary things are happening in space, from strange lights to unidentified objects banging on the hull of a spacecraft. Here speaking is Cub, and today I'm going to talk about the strange and scary things astronauts have seen in outer space. Several years ago, NASA published a video in which an alien, or rather, its hand, was caught on camera. All of this was recorded at the Sophia Observatory. NASA employees aboard recorded a video illustrating the progress of the research and the overall situation of the observatory. But as we can see, the situation there was more than strange. The footage shows a bony and pale hand with 3 long fingers reaching for the computer keyboard. What is this? Is it an alien or just an illusion? What do you think about it? I'm biased to speak, right? In 2016, an amateur astronomer shared an interesting video recorded the previous year. The video shows 2 round black dots flying against the backdrop of the moon. The author repeats this phenomenon several times at different speeds, applying color filters. He and a small group of like-minded people are convinced that the flying objects in the photo are alien spaceships. In particular, ufologist Scott Warr said that the 2 black spots are classic-shaped flying saucers. The objects are clearly created outside our planet because antennas or solar panels cannot be seen on them. If these are the infamous alien spaceships, I wonder, where were they going? On May 5, 1981, Soviet astronaut Vladimir Kovalyonok saw something mysterious from the window of the Salyut 6 orbital space station. It was around 6:20 p.m. Kovalyonok was surprised that something incomprehensible was flying along the orbit with the spacecraft. The object resembled a bar in the shape of 2 connected balls. The visible sphere became transparent, as if it had a body inside. The astronaut observed that in space, it is difficult to determine the size and speed of the object, so it is impossible to name the exact size of the object. Kovalyonok called his partner Viktor Savnik, and then an even more surprising phenomenon occurred. Savnik was just preparing his camera when the object suddenly exploded in the middle of space. In fact, there were 2 explosions. First, there was the initial explosion, and half a second later, the second part exploded, so it was not possible to capture all of this. The astronauts immediately contacted the Mission Control Center and reported the events. What could it have been? Not only strange objects may be present in space, but there are also mysterious sounds that are also very strange. For example, Soviet cosmonaut Vladislav Volkov was not afraid and very poetically recounted the incredible phenomenon he encountered. There was a dark spot flying low, and suddenly the barking of a dog came from that spot. He thought it was the voice of his Laika dog. Then he heard the crying of a baby and some other voices. It is impossible to explain everything. I could only feel as if the universe was calling me. It was speaking to me. These lines were written just a few days before his tragic death in 1971. Does his death have anything to do with the fact that he tried to uncover the truth? This fact was not immediately noticed. The first human spaceflight was one of the greatest events of all time. However, the first cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin later confessed that throughout the entire flight, he was haunted by music. He said it was very elaborate and beautiful at the same time. He had never heard it before. Several years later, Gagarin heard this melody again, this time on the radio. It turns out it was a new composition by the Electronic Instruments Orchestra of Vaslav Michelin. But how is this possible? How is it possible to hear extravagant melodies in space years before they are played, considering that Gagarin had never been a big fan of music? Furthermore, in the year of Gagarin's spaceflight, nobody in the Soviet Union even knew the concept of electronic music. Why did this happen? Tell me in the comments what you think about it, and stay tuned to find out what other strange things astronauts had to experience in space. Astronaut Franklin's story. Musgrave flew on 6 space flights and admitted to seeing many things. For example, in a 1994 interview, the astronaut said he witnessed UFOs. What appeared before his eyes were flying objects that looked like snakes. Musgrave had the impression that they were made of rubber and was impressed by their undulating movements. The UFOs followed him for a long time. According to Musgrave, He saw these incomprehensible creatures for a long time. Could they be some kind of tracking device that aliens sent to follow spacecraft? Or were they representatives of a spacefaring civilization? Astronaut Yang Liwei successfully flew into space in October 2003, marking the first time in China's history. But we're interested in something else. The fact is that while in orbit aboard the Shenzhou 5 spacecraft, he contacted Earth and said something like the following: "There's a knocking on my door outside." According to him, the loud knocking came suddenly and then disappeared, but soon the knocking repeated. Liwei realized that the sound was not coming from the spacecraft or even from outside and became very concerned. What to do in such a situation? Tell them there was nobody home and ask them to leave? After returning to Earth, specialists examined the spacecraft, but the source of the sound could not be identified. Technicians even tried to recreate a similar knocking sound, but the astronaut never heard what he heard during those mysterious seconds in orbit. The first Chinese astronaut also spoke with the crews of Shenzhou 6 and Shenzhou 7 before their launches and warned about the possible occurrence of an unusual knocking. However, they never heard anything. So what happened on the Shenzhou 5 spacecraft, and why didn't they knock on other spacecraft? In 2005, NASA astronaut Leroy Chiu, who had been aboard the International Space Station for 6.5 months, witnessed another strange phenomenon during a spacewalk. He saw 5 strange lights. This shocked the astronaut, but he couldn't understand where the luminous objects came from or what they were. According to him, the lights flew very quickly and in a certain order. Later, scientists tried to figure out what had happened but couldn't provide any answers.
In 2003, something strange happened to Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano during his first spacewalk. It could have ended in tragedy as he nearly drowned, and yes, he literally almost drowned in space. Luca Parmitano and his colleague, NASA astronaut Christopher Cassidy, were in space for 6 hours, needing to place a cable outside the station and perform some other tasks. Nothing seemed to signify problems. However, Parmitano suddenly reported water leaking from the back of his head. Perhaps it was sweat, after all. Hard work in space can make you sweat. Luca was told he needed to continue the work, but it didn't help. He could already feel the water falling into his eyes and covering his nose. Parmitano could no longer hear Cassidy's voice or the flight control officer's voice, nor did he know which direction to go to return to the airlock. Fortunately, the astronaut remembered the safety tether and miraculously made it back to the ISS. A total of about 2 liters of water was pumped out of the astronaut's spacesuit. According to the official version, it was a failure in the suit's cooling system. But what if it was something else? Meet Samantha Cristoforetti, an Italian astronaut. She's giving an interview and talking about the operation of the observation module shields. It sounds a bit boring, right? But don't fall asleep, because suddenly strange luminous objects appear on the observation camera. One by one, they move smoothly through space. Cristoforetti herself didn't notice this strange phenomenon. She was engrossed in the story, and at that moment, the mysterious objects flew behind her. Aliens are not only observing astronauts, but they no longer fear flying so close. They don't consider the risks of being caught on camera and are not afraid to engage in interviews. That's all, folks. Do you believe in the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations? Tell me in the comments. Thank you for watching, and until next time.